I know if it didn't go in this time, eventually it's going to go in. And if they keep throwing the ball to me, I'm going to keep shooting it. I'm going to keep shooting it. You throw that ball to me, you know what? I'm going to shoot that ball. And I'm going to be ready to catch that rebound if I got a couple more seconds left on that clock. That's how you got to be when you want to beat the competition. You can't freeze. Because guess what? You might not get that chance again. Right? You got to be willing to be a free agent. You know what that means? That means sometimes you got to be willing to cut some ties and try a new assignment. Take your talent somewhere else where they're going to continue to develop and grow. Sometimes we stay too long and we're limiting ourselves because it's comfortable and we're afraid, right? That if we go on the other side of the wall, we might not be successful. Well, if you're afraid of failing, you're never going to be successful. The other one is you got to be able to elevate your game when you're on the big stage. I kind of talked on that one already, but you get that one. And be willing to take that shot. Question?
I want to go back to be able to assess the capability of your competition. I think that's an important one to spend a little bit of time on, because that gets into networking, sponsorship. So the question is, I guess I would like to open the question, how would you assess the capability of your competition? Because in isolation, you may think your 5 rocks are the best 5 rocks on the planet. But until they're compared to somebody else's 5 rocks, you don't know that you got a solid set of 5 rocks. So how do you assess the capability? How do you know that you got an A game?
Okay. And for those on the phone, if you didn't hear, the question was, how do you assess the capability of your competition? Like, how do you really tell if you got an A or B game? And you bring up a very good point. You know, as you are assessing the competition, typically you know the people, whether they're peers, whether they're above you, whether they're below you. You know the people who are highly viewed, the ones who are considered the top talent in the company. And those are the people that you should be looking at, understanding, watching. How are they behaving? What things are they doing? What are their results? How do their results compare to my results? Who are they networking with? Right? And what I always do, typically in new assignments, is I always ask my hiring manager, or I ask a manager, who's the best in class? Who do you consider to be the best person in this role that I'm aspiring to obtain? Sometimes it takes them by surprise, but they always come back with an answer. This individual. And why? What is it about that individual's behaviors and their results that causes you to believe that they're better than everyone else? You don't have to figure this out on your own. You can ask. And if people aren't comfortable sharing a name, you can talk about the behaviors. Right? Because some people might feel a little uncomfortable. Well, you know, we don't call names. But what type of behaviors have you seen in an individual that you would consider best in class in this area? What specifically is it about them and how they deliver their results? Because that's what you want to know. Because from those answers, you can go off and look at what you're doing and how you're doing it and determine if there's some adjustments. And you can also talk about not just the results, but the style. So was there any specific way that they delivered them that causes you to feel that way? Because sometimes it's not necessarily always the number in the results, but how they did it. Oh, he got everybody together. We've never been able to get everybody together in a cross-functional team. And all hands were on deck, right? So sometimes it's about how they get the work done and how you're able to build a culture in the process of delivering results. So these are the things that you want to penetrate when you're sizing a competition. Who's the best? And how are they doing it? Why do people feel they're the best? And then you go back and you can assess easily how you're doing. Now, you can have a more direct conversation, especially with your manager, and ask, based on how I'm delivering my results, how does that compare to the best in class? What are some things that I can be doing that will cause you to say, I'm best in class? And you can make it very, very personal. And that way you're getting feedback directly from your manager on what you need to do to be positioned for beating the competition. What would that look like to you? And then they can verbalize, and you can just take notes and build that into your 5 rocks. But I do believe, going back to the 5 rocks, that you've got to be able to look at your 5 rocks, and you've got to be able to assess whether your 5 rocks are positioning you to beat the competition. And if you don't have enough meat in those rocks, if your rocks are pebbles, if you got a handful of pebbles, then you're going to need to go back and negotiate and work with your manager on beefing up your rocks, because you'll never beat the competition with pebbles. We need boulders, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, I got boulders on my 5 rocks. Tanya might say that I have rocks. I've got boulders. And I carry my boulders proudly, because I know when I roll my boulders out, everybody gonna have to get out the way. Nobody don't have to tell me about my rocks. I got boulders. And you have to have that level of confidence when you're trying to position yourself to beat the competition. Not that just declare to all 100+ people on this phone that I have boulders. Because I know that my 5 rocks are more than sufficient. And I don't need any more, LaTanya, if you're on the phone. I'm just saying. You know? So this is how you got to be confident, and you got to sit down with your boss and make sure that as you look at your work plan, that it's positioning you to beat the competition. Then you got to go out and do it. Okay?
Karen, one other thing to add is you got to be willing to have that conversation, or those conversations. Because I think a lot of time we sit back and say, oh, my boss is going to take care of me, or people are going to take care of me. But, you know, we really have to take the initiative, be assertive, and really going after the questions and answers we need to get the data and the information to be successful.
Karen, there's one other point, and I think too, piggybacking off of you, Willie, that relationship between the individual and the boss, that is a critical relationship that sometimes we take very lightly and very soft. That is a critical relationship. But you mentioned about style, you know, talking about being best in class in style. One element of our culture, we bring some differences around our style. Those differences are why P&G sought us in the first place. So we spend a lot of time trying to adjust something that was working and winning.
Right.
So I think for us, when we talk about assessing our brand equity and what sets us apart, what set us apart before we got here is probably what's setting us apart while we're here if we leverage it. Our style is unique and it comes from our culture.
Right.
You know, nobody else can teach it except for your culture, your environment, your parents, or wherever you were raised and reared. But I think we're trying to adjust and fit in, and that brings you into the pack, as the Boy Scouts would say. We need to get on stage and pull away and be uniquely set apart from the pack.
Exactly. And I'll build on that. The one thing that I do celebrate about Procter & Gamble is their interest in hiring diverse talent,
Yes.
which is why we're all here. And I do think sometimes we tend to lose sight of the reason we're here is because of our desire as a company to have diverse talent. And sometimes I think it can get confusing to us in terms of how do we balance maintaining our own blackness and bringing that in a way that it helps promote and contributes to the bottom line with the company. And I would say, if you think about one of the biggest struggles I think we have is how do you really build those relationships with others who don't necessarily look like us, act like us, and understand us. I always say it's my personal responsibility to ensure that those people are comfortable with me.
That's right.
right? And if I relied on them to develop that level of comfort, it might not happen. And the only way that comes is for building the relationships. It doesn't matter what color you are, what age you are, what level you are, there's always some commonality that you can find. I can go up and talk to Hugh, and in 5 minutes we can find something we have in common. And that's what you hone in on to develop that connection. And that's how you start to build the relationships that doesn't become a barrier to you beating the competition. Because you can go out again and do all of this great work, but a part of beating the competition is you got to have sponsorship, you got to have advocacy, you got to have people willing to stand up when you're sitting in that meeting having rating discussions. And it can't always be somebody who looks like us, and there's not always going to be somebody that looks like us in the meeting. So this is a part of the world that we live in. And you have to take that responsibility to go in and build those relationships. And I think what you'll find is it's not that hard, and they appreciate it. And they're going to come back. They're going to come back, and they're going to continue to want to build on that. Right? And they're going to like, actually what I found is they like being able to go on and say, oh yeah, I know Angeline, yeah, we go way back. It could be the yesterday, but this is my experience. They want it. A lot of them just don't know how to do it. And if you just try it, if you go out today or tomorrow, and someone who you may not have ordinarily tried to make a connection with, you'd be surprised at how easy it is to make a connection. And I'm not saying you got to go out and have dinner with the people and you got to, go golfing. Sometimes it's just a conversation in the hallway. March Madness, talk about the basketball games, or if they have kids. I don't have kids. I connect with people about kids all the time. I talk about I have used my nephews and my little brothers. And look, the boys are 18 now. I talk about them like that guy. They're on my bio. And people ask me, oh, how old are your boys? I saw them on your bio. Oh, those are my brothers, but they're just like my kids. But I make connections with those boys, and they are. I love the little guys. But you can make connections on any front. And my point is, look for the connections. The connections normally surface very quickly because people talk about what they're interested in. And then if you're interested in it, you go and you just keep moving the conversation along on something that you're interested in. You'll find the connection. It's not hard. It's easy. Any questions or comments from the phone? I'm doing on time.
It's 10:48.
Okay, great. Any comments or thoughts from the phone? People on the phone. We want to hear from you.
Hi, Karen. This is Lee Jackson from Albany.
Hi, Lee.
Albany alumni, yeah!
Albany alumni.
So, Karen, I just want to say the video, I think it was very powerful, and it had a very encouraging message to it. But my question is, all too often we hear messages from the company that talks about work-life balance, or now I think we refer to it as effectiveness. So with newer people coming into the company, how do we strike a balance between the two messages of how to beat the competition, meaning that you spend a lot of and effort just developing your brand equity versus work-life balance?
Excellent question. And I don't necessarily think that in order to beat the competition, you got to work a zillion hours. I think you have to be strategic. And the strategic part was one of the examples I just gave in terms of how are you building the relationships. It's not who you know, it's who knows you. And then how do they know you? Do they know you in a positive way? It goes all the way back to that whole pie, right? And your performance, your image, and So you got to be able to be strategic. And when you assess the competition and what is it going to take to beat the competition, that's when you can be strategic. That's when you put your strategy together on what is it going to take. And I guess that's the hard part, right? The hard part is being disciplined to assess the competition and beat the competition. A lot of times we're just busy. We're too busy. We're too busy to set up a one-to-one. And doesn't mean that you go fill your calendars with one-to-ones, you know, for 5 days, 4 days out of 5. But what it means is you're strategic about the individual that you may need to spend 30 minutes with. When I set up meetings with my sponsors, I never set it up for more than 30 minutes. I send them a talk sheet on things I want to talk. They always pre-read it. I'm very specific when I meet with them is, here's what I need from you. I assume you've read it. Yep, I've read it. I got it. Okay, here's what I need from you. And then we can dialogue on whether they're going to be able to deliver it or what coaching they need to give me. So it's about being strategic. But in order to do that, you got to assess the competition. The sooner we can start instilling this in new hires, you're going to have to work hard. Now, there's some element of work. You got to work hard. You're going to have to be in there doing what it takes to get the work done. But you got to be strategic. So there's a balance. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Let me add one piece to that, and that would be it's about quality versus quantity.
Yeah.
And but like Karen just said, you will have to work hard, but also I want to add the word communication. LaTanya just gave a speech at Tuskegee the other day, 2 days ago, right?
Okay.
And she talked about how she had to make her peer group was requiring her to come in at 7 in the morning to do a meeting, but she's got kids, and that's important to her. Back to work-life balance. She could have taken a position of, okay, I want to beat the competition, so I'm going to be at that meeting with them, and I'm going to beat them that way. But instead, she communicated to her supervisor and just set an expectation. I have kids. That's important to me, and you know, I'm here to do what I need to do, but I can't do that. So by setting some boundaries and communicating with her well, not her competition, her boss, things changed. People understood where she was, and there wasn't an expectation that she would do that. So, and everything worked out. She was able to be there for her kids and still eventually become the director that she is. So I guess the point is, it is quality versus quantity, but it is also communication, and it doesn't excuse you from doing hard work at times.
Right, and I think that's a good point. But I want to emphasize, everybody can't go and say they can't make it to the 6 o'clock meetings.
Especially in a plant.
So it depends on the environment that you're in.
Right.
But you've got to be able to really understand the personal boundaries. And you have to be able to communicate those. And the people on my team that I love are the ones who come to me and they say, Karen, I have to leave at 4 o'clock, you know, because I've got to, or my son has a play and I really want to go. I love that. Because it allows me to be able to support them in a way that they can deliver without the stresses. And what I found, those individuals who communicate that, they tend to just work harder because they're so excited and happy that they have that support. And I have to tell them, can you please go home? You know, it's 6 o'clock, get out of here, you know? So what I found at P&G is typically the management, they're very supportive when you communicate with them because it allows and gives them an opportunity to understand how to support you to be excellent. Okay? Any other thoughts or comments? Thank you, Lee, for your comment. Well, if there aren't any other comments, I do want to take this opportunity to recognize my posse.
Get us on camera.
Alton Stevens and Willie Johnson. I can't say enough about these guys. Alton has been just an awesome partner in helping to deliver and execute these PSAALN sessions. Again, these sessions are designed for all of you, and that as a community we continue to develop our capability and support each other. And Willie also continues to provide support and throughout this process. So I also want to finally just recognize again the Albany site for all that you do and continue to do in supplying diverse talent to this company. I was excited to have the opportunity to be here and celebrate all of the great things that are happening and will continue to happen here at this Albany site. Thank you all for calling in today. If people have questions or are interested in the presentation, Alton will send it out and he'll send out the link for the
Yes, go ahead.
for the team space. And